The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Zviad Sikolia, the Georgian industrial designer, started the production of fragrances, Sikolia's Picture. This is the name of the first perfume produced by a Georgian designer, which will be presented in a picture-shaped bottle. Zviad Sikolia shared this news with his followers via Facebook. The day of fulfilling my dream, we started production of the first Georgian fragrance perfume for the first time under the Georgian brand. Sikolia's Picture will soon be in Georgia, the designer posted. The Ministry of Finance published the updated version of the 2023 budget. According to the document, the government plans to collect 16.3 billion lari in taxes next year. This amount is 337 million lari more compared to the draft budget. The value-added tax plan increased the most by 244 million lari, which should reach 6.7 billion lari next year. The profit tax plan increases by 55 million lari to 2 billion. The first Georgian fish and seafood processing company, Umali, was sold. The production of products is temporarily suspended, but it is planned to be restored with the same brand from December 25. The director of the company, Tito Zverava, confirmed this information in a conversation with BM.G. This is The Checkpoints. I'm Elena Kvanchilashvili, author and the host of the show, and The Checkpoints team is ready to sum up the business and economics week for you. Irakli Garibashvili, Prime Minister of Georgia, met Changpeng Zhao, aka CZ, co-founder and chief executive officer of Binance, largest cryptocurrency exchange of the world, on Wednesday. Positioning Georgia as the hub of advanced financial technologies and its significance was highlighted at the meeting, along with the strategic location and invention-driven government of Georgia. Stable and favorable business environment of the country was also noted, as it offers significant opportunities to investors. Readiness towards future cooperation was also expressed at the meeting. According to Forbes, the net worth of Changpeng Zhao, CZ, is estimated at 17.4 billion USD. More from Georgi Aronia on the spot.
Last week was a blast for the Georgian crypto industry, as the founder and CEO of the world's largest crypto exchange, Binance, Changpeng Zhao, also known as CZ, visited the country. During his visit, CZ met with the Prime Minister of Georgia, Ministers of Economy and Finance, and the Vice President of the National Bank. According to the official statement, the parties discussed positioning Georgia as the hub of advanced financial technologies. Later, however, CZ attended the press briefing, on which we had the opportunity to ask the opening question. What did the government and CZ talk about, and what are the world's largest crypto exchanges' Georgian plans?
Generally, the topics are how can we establish more in Georgia, and what can we do? Our own local team, local presence, recruiting, investments in the local economy, educational efforts, and what can Georgia do for us? What kind of assistance do we need? Regulatory clarity, other levels of support. So the discussions are quite high level. When you talk with the Prime Minister, we basically agree on a direction to move forward with. There's not a whole lot of specific details being discussed on the first meeting. So we do expect that we will continue to get very strong support from the local government, local policymakers, and local regulators, and also local industry players like banks, other cryptocurrency companies, etc. So that's the general direction. It was a very positive meeting, and after arriving here and after that meeting, each time our confidence in Georgia have increased significantly. So that will allow us to invest much more heavily in Georgia going forward. We will have an office for sure. We will have a presence, and we already have 2 people on the local team, and we foresee that will grow very quickly. For example, we went to Dubai a year ago. I went to Dubai a year ago. We had 2 people locally in Dubai a year ago. Now we have 600 people in Dubai. So we will hope to look at a similar type of growth, hopefully in Georgia. I think Georgia is very uniquely positioned. It's in the middle of Europe, and it's very neutral.
During the meeting with CZ, Irakli Garibashvili stated that the government of Georgia stands ready to greatly support and facilitate foreign direct investments, and that legislation of the country is ready to regulate the cryptocurrency exchange. Given the statement's broadness, we asked CZ whether Binance plans to invest in Georgia anytime soon.
Whenever we enter a country, we do a number of direct or indirect investments. Number one, we will have to establish our own team. We'll have to invest in hiring people, building out infrastructure. We may build R&D centers, etc. All of those are investments in the local economy already. We also do investments into other companies or other businesses, both inside crypto and also outside of the crypto industry. So, for example, we would be looking at other projects in the Georgia space, and we want to encourage more developers, entrepreneurs, and existing businesses who will making some of those direct investments. We also have we also have the ability to attract some of the other players in the industry. So wherever we go, the industry tend to think that we have done our homework, and that country is crypto friendly. So we went to Dubai. Quite a lot of crypto businesses went to Dubai. We went to Paris. Quite a lot of people went there. So we're hoping that we can do that for Georgia as well. So those are indirect ways to attract investments here. We do think just fundamentally this technology will allow entrepreneurs in Georgia, existing businesses in Georgia to raise money more easily. And this is actually the most direct form of foreign direct investment because the business are raising money globally.
During the last few months, the global crypto industry has been in great turmoil. What began with Terra's collapse was intensified by FTX's fiasco. While answering the question on FTX's collapse and Binance's role in it, CZ claimed quite straightforwardly that Sam Bankman-Fried, most probably, committed fraud and lied to many people.
Who's guilty? I think I don't know all of the people that might be guilty there, but I think it's very clear that Sam Bankman-Fried, he most likely have committed significant fraud and lied to a lot of different people, including he probably lied to users, he lied to regulators, he lied to his employees. He lied to his investors, VC investors. So he obviously lied to a lot of people. What type of crime or sentencing or whatever he gets, that's up to the courts, legal system. So as a pair industry player, I can't make those kind of legal judgments on them. We may have be seen as causing it, but I don't think we caused it. With the last straw, that FTX obviously had the issues at FTX went far back. So it wasn't an issue that was only happening in the last couple of weeks. So we certainly didn't cause it, but we may have been seen, the timing-wise, coincidentally, our announcement of us selling FTT tokens may have been seen to be a trigger. But I think the fact that FTX went down so quickly, even if we didn't do that, there's a possibility that he may call me and say, hey, he's insolvent. We don't know.
In parallel to CZ's visit to Georgia, the second Binance meetup was held in Tbilisi. The very fact that CZ appeared before the audience on the second meetup and not later means that Georgia is indeed a very important market for the world's largest crypto exchange. Let us hope that Binance's Georgian activity will motivate other companies to follow the suit.
Let's take a brief look at what the rest of the business week looked like in Georgia in our weekly Business Wire, pulled together traditionally by our reporter Natia Taktakishvili.
Clubs and bars were closed at the earliest during the coronavirus pandemic by the decision of the Coordination Council, and they reopened at the last stage of opening the economy. During this period, representatives of the sectors were talking about multi-million losses. As they claimed, many businesses left the market due to the COVID pandemic. Representatives of nightclub Khiri Sofo Ebralidze states that the clubs have returned to their usual regime. although with increased financial obligations and expenses. Unfortunately, the bank obligations that existed until now have increased and we have to pay them. It's also very difficult to deal with the tax pressure. We pay a very large amount of money to the budget every month. We have more financial challenges today than we had before 2020, says Sopo Ebralidze, representative of Club Hedi. Georgian premium restaurant Sakartvelo was opened in Philadelphia. Speaking to BMG, the founder of the restaurant, Imeda Londaridze, says that he has invested a total of $300,000 in the facility. The restaurant has 2 floors and can host 70 guests. The newly opened restaurant employs 10 people. In downtown Philadelphia, there was no Georgian restaurant despite the demand. Our restaurant opened early in November and we already have quite a lot of guests. Sakartvelo offers only Georgian dishes. Among them are Adjarian Khachapuri, Khinkali and others. We don't cook American or European dishes here, explained Imeda Londaridze. Regarding the staff and pay, according to Londaridze, finding a good Georgian chef in the USA is no longer difficult, while it was not an easy process about 3 years ago. As he notes, their salary ranges from $150 to $200. The restaurant will have a turnover of $3-4 million per year, as Imeda Londaridze told BMG. According to him, he has been developing a restaurant business since 2016. Currently, he owns 3 restaurants: Georgian Bread, Cuisine, Little Georgia, and Sakartvelo. In the Georgian mountain resort of Gudauri, the new bar restaurant Chak Bar Gudauri will be launched. The new location is part of development of catering facilities by non-standard beverage company Charles Roulos. The founders of Chak Bar Gudauri, in cooperation with the development company Marshall Gudauri, will open a restaurant space in the apartment complex. The relevant agreement has already been reached between the parties. As the co-founder of Charles Roulos, Leman Chikwaidze, told BMG, the company will invest $10,000-15,000 to build a new facility and create 10-15 jobs. The bar restaurant will be launched in the test mode on December 20. The bar will focus on cocktails and cuisine tailored to them. The internal space with its terrace is about 300 square meters and we will be able to host over 200 people, says the co-founder of the company. Levan Chikwaidze explains that the partners made the decision to open bars this year and opened the first object on the territory of wine factory with an investment of up to $30,000. The aim was to promote their non-standard drink Charles Roulos and promote similar drinks on the market. The company produces 5,000 bottles per year under the Charles Roulos brand and sells them in the HoReCa sector. After the leaving Russian market, the mineral water producing company It's a Water, located in Russia, has been conducting negotiations on exports with Qatar and the United Emirates. So far, it has not received a positive response. Its founder, Vladimir Gurgenidze, told BMG that the company cannot continue production without exports. We still continue the negotiations, but they are constantly delaying the process, sometimes even for 2 weeks. It's difficult to make final decisions. Until now, we were exporting to Russia, but due to the recent events, we left the Russian market, explained Vladimir Gurgenidze. According to him, currently, It's a Water is sold only in the Russia region because the distribution price has increased so much that transportation outside the region will cause losses, and the small enterprise does not have the resources to deal with the additional challenge. Gurgenidze notes that he currently employs 18 people in the factory, but he is experiencing a shortage of workers and says that he had to bring some people from Tbilisi. It's a Water was established in Ambrolauri in 2018 with an investment of $2 million in the scope of Enterprise Georgia project. The company received land area at a symbolic price of $1. On November 25, Tisquili Group's multifunctional space theater was officially opened. The show, this is the name of the first performance hosted by the space. The opera, singers and ballet troupe of the Tbilisi Opera and Ballet State Theatre and other outstanding representatives of the art took part in the performance. The artistic director of the performance is Zalchiko Baba, the musician director is Nicholas Rajueli, and the chef is Alex Natadze. Ticket sales will start from December and anyone can attend the show. Theatre will also work on the principle of invitation. Creative groups will be able to use this space for theatrical productions, opera or ballet performances, shows, concerts, exhibitions, and other cultural events. It's also possible to hold corporate tunings, award ceremonies, presentations, closed events such as weddings, birthdays, and others. The new multifunctional space theater is located in Beliashvili Street next to restaurant complex Tisquili. It's now open for visitors and interested parties. Products of Georgian children's apparel brand Lemo are sold on Amazon. As its founder, Nina Giorgadze told, the women's narrative Lemo clothes are exported to 3 countries. Lemo has achieved many success in a very short time with the support of various organizations as well as Agency Enterprise Georgia. We participate in international exhibitions and make exports to 3 countries, Armenia, Sweden, and France. Now our products are also sold on the American Amazon. Our products are also sold online through Facebook and Instagram pages as well as in the store of Social Enterprise Alliance ESKI, says the founder. Lemo has been on the market for 2 years and is distinguished from other brands by the embroidery on the clothes. Nino Giorgobiani says that embroidered images contribute to a child's cognitive development. As for future plans, in the near future it will be possible to buy Lemo production in Gldani Mall as well. It's also planned to increase the number of employees. Ambassador Group launched a new wine enterprise this year, which is located near the Ambassador Kachreti Hotel. As the company explained to BMG, Merineo Bakeburia has been producing wine for several years, but the enterprise received the grape for the first time this year. Currently, we make 10 types of wines, some of which are made by the traditional Kahuri method, while others by the classical method. The company notes, adding that the enterprise currently employs about 500 people, most of them are local residents. The wine products produced by Merineo Bakeburia is planned to be sold on export markets in addition to the local market, for which the company has already started the research. Our produced wine is currently presented on the Georgian market, although it's planned to export to the USA and several European countries. At this stage, we are actively researching markets and preparing for wine exports. 70% of the produced wine will be exported, while 30% will be sold within the country, Ambassador Group says. The Bank of Georgia continues to actively support the tourism and hospitality sector. A 5-star 190-room hotel Gori was opened in the city of Gori within the framework of joint project of Bank of Georgia and Lakai State. The hotel includes 3 residential spaces, a living room and entertainment area for children, and a lounge bar with an open terrace. Guri Inn features a restaurant, an indoor swimming pool, and a sauna. The hotel also has a conference room and a wine cellar. We're glad that with the support of Bank of Georgia, we are able to build and open a 5-star hotel in Gori. We think that Gori is a tourist destination, has great potential and needs to be promoted even more. In addition, Gori Museum and Uplistikha located near Gori and are considered to be quite popular places for tourists. That's why it's important for us to develop the hotel sector so that Gori can be an even more distinguished tourist city, both in terms of tourism and hospitality as well as high-level hotels, said David Bachorishvili, the representative of Gori Inn Hotel.
Last week, the IMF in Georgia held a presentation of the main findings of Regional Economic Outlook. Here are some highlights as presented by Selim Chakir, IMF permanent representative in Georgia.
Relative to our earlier forecast, the outlook has improved due to several factors. One of them is war-related migration and capital flows impacting the consumption and activity. At the same time, tourism has been stronger, in particular in Georgia, relative to our forecast. And also this middle corridor shift of trade towards the CCA region is also having a positive impact. At the same time, the global risks have increased. That is impacting the global inflation, is having an impact on the region's inflation. Inflationary pressures are higher. We also see that there is a synchronized tightening by major central banks, and this can impact debt stress. It's already impacting the debt stress of emerging market countries. Also, capital inflows are negatively impacted. And going forward, this is an area we follow closely. The IMF has revised its global growth outlook down to 2.7% next year. And this is the lowest since 2001, other than the 2008 global crisis and the pandemic year. So there are certain risks. There is a China slowdown. So this is all having an impact. These are all issues, of course, the war's impact on global commodity and food prices, remittances to the region. These are all issues and risks we follow closely. For this year, let me add that we expect Georgia to grow around 10%, and we expect some slowdown next year, growing at 4%, before recovering to a medium path growth rate of 5% or above.
Our reporter and analyst, Georgi Aronia, attended the presentation, and he will join me now to give you more details about the frequently asked questions at the presentation. Georgi, the floor is yours.
Hi, Elena. The presentation of the Regional Economic Outlook by the IMF is a big deal for the local business community, so it is no surprise that many important people attended the conference. Among the most interesting questions posed to Mr. Chakir was whether the coordinated tightening of the monetary policy by the Fed, European Central Bank and the Bank of England would have a spillover effect on the region and Georgia.
For the countries that rely on market funding, more market funding, right? Definitely the impact is higher. If nothing else, the rates, borrowing rates have increased. So far, initially we have seen some outflow from emerging markets that seem to have slowed down, which is good news. But I think for the region, for the sovereign, market funding carries less weight. You know, there is more reliance on donor funding, which is on softer terms, right? Some of those donor funding is indexed, right? Even IMF funding is indexed to STR rates, so when those rates increase, your funding will increase, but will not endanger debt sustainability. We would be worried if a major emerging market defaults, right? And that triggers a sell-off in overall emerging markets and starts a series of depreciation pressures, which in that case, you may have to respond with tighter monetary and fiscal policies. Now, good thing for Georgia is that I think your policy response during the last years has been the right one, in the sense that there was a windfall, so to say, but you built fiscal and external buffers. You know, your debt to GDP was reached at some point 60%, now it is down to 40%. So you have now some buffers to use if a negative shock happens. Similarly, central bank has been extra vigilant and accumulated reserves in good times so that you can manage some volatility if a negative shock happens.
Another important question posed to Mr. Chakir was whether the effects of the positive economic shock caused by the war in Ukraine have already withered off, or will wither off by the end of this year, as according to the IMF, the economic growth will slow down to 4% in 2023.
Let me highlight that, the war-related inflows was a factor, right, in Georgia's economic performance, but definitely wasn't the only factor, right? One factor was, I think, the good macro policies in the years ahead of even the pandemic, that be it strong bank supervision, again building buffers, fiscal and external buffers, they all paid off. So these strong policy anchor will continue to remain support Georgia. This mid-corridor is there. We see even capacity constraints, and we hear more and more investment plans in Georgia on the energy sector and also on the logistical sector, among other sectors. Some of it will remain, but we don't expect a similar wave of inflows. Now, we didn't expect it before, then there was this conscription and another wave of flows, but, bearing a surprise, probably there'll be some mitigation. Hence our forecast of a slowdown, next year to 4%. And the policy response has been, as Governor highlighted, was assuming that this is a temporary shock. Part of it was positive, but that it's temporary. Hence, the policy response was building fiscal buffers and reserve buffers.
During the presentation of the Regional Economic Outlook, Mr. Chakir claimed that the implementation of structural reforms is crucial for Georgia. During the Q&A, I had the chance to ask Mr. Chakir to elaborate on the topic and to mention a few areas that required reforms the most.
On the structural side and on the macro side of the program that we support, of course, one target on the fiscal side is to bring deficit below 3% per the fiscal rule. We are working with the authorities. Actually, we like them to bring it closer to 2%, to have some more buffers that require, over the medium term, maybe some measures on the revenue side or on the spending side. But this is on track. Reserve targets are met. There are no issues. Of course, bringing inflation back to target is important. Now, on the structural side, the program and what we support has this state-owned enterprise reform. We see it essential. They account for a good chunk of employment and economic activity. And we agreed with the government on the main principles of a state-owned enterprise reform. The second element was the renewable energy support. We have been talking with the government for a long time on that. Finally, we reached an agreement. We want those renewable energy support to be done on a competitive basis, and that there is a program as to how to proceed with it. So I'm happy to say that we agreed on these main principles. Now, strengthening growth and making it more inclusive through education and training, addressing high unemployment and labor market mismatches, addressing the infrastructure investment gaps, improving the business environment. These are kind of all important targets of the government and also of the program. Other donors are taking a bigger lead on those issues, where the IMF is taking the lead on the SOE reform and renewable energy support scheme.
Thank you, Giorgi, for very interesting insights from the presentation of IMF this week. We will continue with some new statistics on inflation. In November 2022, the consumer price index increased by 0.5% compared to the previous month, while the annual inflation rate amounted to 10.4%. Such is the preliminary data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia, Geostat. The annual inflation rate was mainly influenced by price changes for the following groups. Food and non-alcoholic beverages, the prices in the group increased by 16.8%. Within the group, the prices increased for the following subgroups: vegetables, bread and cereals, mineral water, soft drinks, fruit and vegetable juices, coffee, tea and cocoa, milk, cheese and eggs, sugar, jam, honey, chocolate and confectionery, fish, oils and fats, meat, fruit and grapes. Now, housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels. Here, the prices for the group posted a 15.4% increase. The prices were higher for the following subgroups: actual rentals for housing, maintenance and repair of the dwelling, electricity, gas and other fuels. And finally, transport. In this group, the prices increased by 8.2%. Within the group, the prices increased for transport services, operation of personal transport equipment and purchase of vehicles. The World Bank assumes it will revise the economic growth outlook in a positive direction late this year. Here's what Sebastian Molinius, World Bank Regional Director for the South Caucasus, told the Checkpoints.
This last year and this current year have been extraordinarily strong. Most experts predict Georgia to again achieve double-digit growth. We right now are at 8.8%, but I anticipate that we will be revising our prognosis upwards as we head towards the end of this calendar year. Next year, we do anticipate that there will be a slowdown in growth. Given the ongoing uncertainty, a likely economic slowdown in Europe and in some of the other main trading partners of Georgia. With that said, I would like to highlight that while some of the growth is, of course, driven by the influx of refugees, in particular Russians, that have come into Georgia, I personally believe that a lot of it is also based on economic reforms that have been undertaken, and I do believe that these will sustain and will keep Georgia's economy growing and growing in a robust clip. Remember, Georgia had averaged about 5% of growth the 10 years prior to COVID-19, and I do expect that Georgia will go back to those numbers moving forward, given, again, its history of strong structural reforms.
Now, more about this week's news in the economy in our brief overview.
Starting January 1, 2023, the Georgian government will begin the three-stage kindergarten construction and rehabilitation program worth of 1.3 billion GLR across the country. About 885 kindergartens require construction and rehabilitation. Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili estimated that the first phase of the program would cost 100 million GLR. On top of that, the government will also build and rehabilitate about 800 schools across the country, as Garibashvili believes the future generations should grow up in a healthy and good environment. We boosted the budget for education by 400 million GLR, as a part of which we plan to build and renovate 500 schools, but we would also allocate more than 150 million GLR. Additionally, more than 30 million GLR will be set aside for the construction of computer labs in schools, he added. The Prime Minister-led cabinet meeting on Monday reviewed a number of issues covering maternity leave pay and assistance to socially vulnerable children. Starting from January 1, 2023, the Georgian government will double the maternity leave pay to 2,000 GLR for private sector employees. Prime Minister Garibashvili reminded the ministers that before the move, the government had decided to give teachers full maternity leave pay. The government will also raise assistance for socially vulnerable children to 200 GLR by allocating 65 million GLR in this direction. According to the Prime Minister, the very assistance totaled to 50 GLR 2 years ago. TBC Capital evaluates that inflation in the country is decreasing, and moreover, deflation is likely to be observed in November of the year compared to October. The MBG Governor Koba Gwenetadze still predicts high inflation late in this year and declares that inflation will start to decrease next year. Our forecasts have not been reduced significantly, and we think that late this year and in January, depending on the base factors, high inflation will still be maintained. Annual inflation will start to decrease from February. It's possible that there will be some surprises, which means that the annual inflation may be lower. As you know, the price of oil, which significantly determines the consumer price index and the prices of other services, was characterized by a decreasing trend. Exchange rate has been maintained at this level for quite a long time, Guinitadze says. According to Tbilisi Mayor Kakhaladze, bad public transport over the years forced citizens to switch to private cars. As he told the journalists, when the residents of Tbilisi will see how comfortable and accessible public transport is, they will give up use of private cars. You can't blame the people because public transport was in terrible condition. After the reform of the public transport, we will show the residents of this city that the public transport is accessible and comfortable for everyone. This will allow more people to travel by public transport and not to travel by private car, says Kaladze. According to him, after the completion of the stages stipulated by the transport policy, there will be approximately 110,000 more seats in the capital public transport compared to 2017. Public transport accessibility will increase by 10% annually. We will be able to move around the city in 30% less time. Moving should no longer be a problem, Kakhaladze said. Salim Chakir, resident representative at the International Monetary Fund, declares that the budget deficit will be below 3% in 2023. Earlier this week, the head of government of Georgia, Irakli Garibashvili, noted the budget deficit would reduce to 3.1%, while it was 4.4% at the beginning of the year, but it would shrink to almost 3% by the next year. From the beginning of the program, we defined the reduction of the gross domestic product to 4% as the target indicators of the fiscal deficit. Today, economic activity is higher than we expected. More revenues have come into the budget, and the government is saving a significant portion of that revenue, reducing the deficit to nearly 3% of GDP. According to the fiscal rules of Georgia, the deficit should fall below 3% of gross domestic product next year. We have an agreement with the government regarding the fiscal targets, including the next year's budget. We are glad that the government has chosen this path and is reducing the deficits, Salim Chakir said. Today, the President of the National Bank also emphasized the necessity of fiscal consolidation. According to Koba Guinitadze, reducing the deficit will also have a positive effect on inflation. Online gambling business, including online casinos, slot machines and betting, will be subject to mandatory permits for specific types of operations following the Georgian government's review of amendments to the relevant law on Monday. According to the bill, online casino permits will be issued only to casino holders, with online slot machine permits likewise granted only to slot machine holders and betting permits issued only for holders of betting businesses. The amendments seek to replace the current regulations that allow online gambling businesses to add different types of operations without acquiring additional permits. The annual permit fee for each of the type of business will be 100,000 gelari, with the fine of violating a permit conditions set at 50,000 gelari and the penalty for violating three deadlines at 20,000 gelari. The estimated real gross domestic product growth rate in October 2022 amounted to 8.3% year-over-year and 10% in January-October of 2022, according to the preliminary data from the National Statistics Office of Georgia. As of the document, in October 2022, the estimated real growth compared to the same period of the previous year was observed in the following activities: construction, transportation and storage, financial and insurance activities, mining and quarrying, hotels and restaurants, arts, entertainment and recreation. A decline was registered in manufacturing and real estate activities.
And now about the annual conference Black Sea New Challenges and Opportunities. As usual, it was attended by diplomatic corps, associations, international financial institutions, government institutions and companies. This time the Black Sea platform was launched by UGBC, and the conference was also attended by partners and general partners of the Black Sea platform. The conference had more than 20 speakers.
An important initiative has been launched on this occasion, namely what you have already mentioned. It's the Black Sea Cooperation Platform, and indeed it is a project most welcome. It's something which I see that it creates the framework for implementing important projects in the. I would like to highlight first of all the fact, and I'm glad to see that this platform has a priority, the connectivity. This is extremely important for providing appropriate links of communication and transport between this part of the Black Sea and further on to Europe, and that would certainly contribute to the closing more and more the making the relations between Georgia and the European Union more and more closer, especially in the context where, as you know, and this is a very good development, Georgia has been given clearly the perspective of joining the European Union in the future. And projects which are supposed to be implemented under the platform would definitely help in this respect. The Black Sea area is really the bridge between East and West, between Asia, between Europe, between North and South, and in this context, you know, the potential is being created for making really of this region a hub for energy, for a hub for transport, and from this perspective, again, the launching of the platform is the most welcome development.
I have been participating in the Black Sea platform. This is a non-governmental initiative in order to link countries at the Black Sea, and in order to link the businesses from the countries in the Black Sea to increase cooperation and to increase connectivity. European Union has been at the forefront of work towards increasing connectivity across the Black Sea. Black Sea should not be a dividing line, it should be a connecting element between European Union and Georgia, and through Georgia with the whole region.
The question that you're asking on how we can improve connectivity across the South Caucasus and really between Europe and Asia, I think is an important one. And I'm actually very pleased to say that the World Bank has actually been very active and looking at achieving very concrete results in this respect. And I would say across three dimensions. The first one is around transport. So as you know, the World Bank is the leading financier and the first financier, in fact, to have financed or helped finance the East-West highway, both in terms of westward expansion, but also now in terms of the eastward expansion. We have also worked on highway construction projects in Azerbaijan as well as Kazakhstan and Turkey. So are really doing our part in terms of supporting the middle corridor. We're doing the same thing in rail. We have ongoing projects in Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan, and in Turkey as well. And finally, in terms of trade and logistics and trade facilitation, we have ongoing diagnostics and analytical work that we're looking at right now, in particular along the middle corridor. Now, in terms of energy, we believe that there's a huge opportunity to look at creating a regional power pool with hydro in Georgia, offshore wind in Azerbaijan, as well as solar in Armenia, creating a regional power pool and then exporting that via the world's longest undersea cable that would connect from Georgia to Europe via Romania. The World Bank is currently conducting a feasibility study on behalf of the government to look at not only the economic but also the technical viability of this, again, transformative project moving forward. And then finally, in terms of digital connectivity, we see an increase in use of broadband, both in the South Caucasus, but then also in terms of connecting Europe via the South Caucasus to Asia, but also the Middle East. Again, big opportunities here to foster regional connectivity that we're happy to support as part of the World Bank.
And lastly, before we say goodbye, let me leave you off with the message that came from Philip Ricker, Senior Advisor of the U.S. Department of State for Caucasus negotiations and the Geneva International discussions after he met with the Georgian Prime Minister, Irakli Garibashvili. At the meeting, Irakli Garibashvili and Philip Ricker discussed the importance of Georgia's strategic partnership with the United States. The positive dynamic of strategic partnership preconditioned by the steps taken with the scope of the cooperation between the two countries was underlined. Full commitment to further deepening and strengthening the current cooperation was expressed at the meeting. The conversation also touched on the security situation in the region and the South Caucasus and Georgia's mediatory role in Armenia-Azerbaijan dialogue. Irakli Garibashvili pointed out that negotiations are the only and important way to resolve any conflict and ensure progress. The meeting was attended by the U.S. Ambassador to Georgia, Kelin Degnan, and head of the government administration, Revaz Javelidze.
Kamarjoba, I'm delighted to be back in Georgia, a country that is critically important for regional peace, stability, and interconnectivity. When I was here last year, I worked closely with Georgia's leaders to mediate between your neighbors, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili played an indispensable role in ensuring the release of detainees and the sharing of the locations of landmines in combat zones. Through its support for the European Union monitoring capacity, Georgia continues to contribute to regional security, and I'm pleased to meet again with the Prime Minister and discuss regional issues. In October, I led the U.S. delegation to the Geneva International discussions. During this trip, I'm discussing how to continue efforts for regional peace, stability, and prosperity, including how the United States and Georgia can promote a peaceful resolution to Russia's occupation of Georgian territory and press Russia to fulfill its obligations under the 2008 ceasefire agreement. The United States of America remains committed to helping ensure the security and prosperity of Georgia, as we have for the past 30 years. This includes our firm commitment to Georgia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We are proud to stand with Georgia as you pursue NATO and EU membership. The United States will continue to do what we can to help you achieve Euro-Atlantic integration because that is the future the people want and deserve. Finally, I would like to thank the citizens of Georgia for your hospitality and strong partnership with the United States. If, as the Georgians say, guests are a gift from God, then Georgia is surely a gift to guests like me.
And this is all for today. We will meet next Sunday at 11 a.m. Before that, check us out on bm.g and forbes.g, and take care.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.